the Indus Valley Civilization. Welcome to Pastmyst, where we bring light to the mystery past. Now let begging with the silent streets. The streets were empty. No fires burned. No screams echoed. No armies marched through the gates. Yet the city was dead. Houses stood open, as if their owners had just stepped outside. Wells were full. Streets were clean. Toys lay where children had dropped them. Food jars were left behind, untouched. This was not destruction. This was absence. And the silence was terrifying. No bodies filled the streets. No mass graves waited beneath the earth. No scars of war marked the walls. An entire civilization had vanished without leaving a final cry. History had no answer. Only questions. Now we go back. Back more than 4,500 years. Back to the wide, life-giving rivers of South Asia. The Indus flowed strong then, feeding fertile land. Crops rose tall. Trade routes opened. And along these riverbanks, something rare appeared. Order. Not chaos. Not constant struggle. Order. Cities rose from the earth with streets laid out in straight lines, like plans drawn before the first brick was placed. Houses were built from fired bricks, all made to the same size. Rooms were carefully arranged. Doors opened onto streets. Drains carried waste away from homes. This was not a village. This was urban life. The largest cities became legends. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, each held tens of thousands of people. At a time when much of the world still lived in small settlements, these cities thrived quietly. And yet, something crucial was missing. There were no palaces, no towering statues of kings, no royal tombs overflowing with gold, no monuments proclaiming conquest. This troubled archaeologists, because cities usually grow under force. But here, power left no fingerprints. Neighborhoods were clean. Drainage systems ran beneath streets, carrying waste away from daily life. Some houses were larger than others, but not much larger. This was not a society of extremes. It was balanced, measured, deliberate. The Indus people were not isolated. Trade linked them to distant lands. Seals carved with animals were found as far away as Mesopotamia. Beads, metals, shells crossed deserts and seas. They traded with the world, but they told no stories. They had writing. Thousands of seals, each carved with precise symbols. Short lines, repeating signs, perfectly made, but no long texts, no inscriptions, no voices. To this day, no one can read their words. Their language is locked in silence. Then the world began to change. Not suddenly, not violently, quietly. Rivers shifted their paths. Monsoon rains weakened. Fields dried. Floods came in strange seasons. The lifeline of the civilization became unreliable. Archaeologists see it in the soil. Layers of mud where floods once swept through cities. Buildings repaired again and again. Walls raised higher. People adapting, trying to hold on. For centuries, they resisted collapse. They moved neighborhoods, rebuilt streets, changed how they lived. But the pressure never stopped. And eventually, something broke. City after city shows the same pattern. Construction slows. Craftsmanship declines. Trade weakens. People leave. Not all at once. Family by family. Street by street. Until silence spreads. Mohenjo-daro was abandoned. Not burned. Not conquered. Left behind. Inside homes, cooking pots remained in place. Tools waited for hands that never returned. There was no panic. Only departure. This was not the fall of a city. It was a withdrawal. A decision to leave rather than fight the future. The people did not vanish. Smaller villages appear afterward. Rural life replaces urban life. It is as if the Indus people chose to step backward. They abandoned civilization. On purpose. Some believe disease played a role. Crowded cities. Changing water systems. Rising floods. Illness could spread quickly. Leaving might have been survival. Others see slow collapse. Food shortages. Flood damage. Trade breakdown. No single disaster. Just too many small ones. Until the cities were no longer worth saving. But none of these fully explain the quiet. Until a discovery changed everything. At one excavation, skeletons were found lying in the streets. Unburied. Unusual. Disturbing. At first, it looked like violence. Had the city fallen suddenly after all? Closer study revealed something stranger. The skeletons were not from the same moment. They died years apart. This was not a massacre. It was abandonment in stages. People leaving, while a few remained behind. Who stayed? Why did they stay? When no one was left to bury the dead, the city truly ended. In the final layers, something chilling appears. The drainage systems stop working. Waste backs up. Streets grow dirty. The great strength of the Indus civilization, its order, collapses. And when order failed, the city could not survive. The end was not loud. It was slow, painful, lonely. Families packed what they could carry. They walked away from homes their ancestors had built. They followed rivers that no longer promised life. They vanished into history. They took their language, their names, their stories, their reasons. For thousands of years, the cities slept beneath dust and sand, forgotten, until modern hands uncovered them again. And scientists faced an unsettling truth. One of the most advanced civilizations of its time fell, without war, which means civilization itself is fragile, even without enemies. At several Indus sites, archaeologists found seals buried deep in the final layers. Not broken, not lost, carefully placed, as if someone was hiding something, preserving it, protecting it from the future. If those seals hold the final message of the Indus people, then the question history fears most: what did they know that made them leave everything behind? The Indus ancient seals were everywhere. Small, square, cool to the touch. Thousands of them. They were pressed into wet clay, tied to bundles of goods, carried through streets, across deserts, and onto ships. Each seal was carved with care: animals, abstract shapes, straight lines, repeating marks. This was not decoration. This was information. And information means intention. Someone wanted these marks to be seen, to be recognized, to mean something. Yet today, they are silent. They speak a language no one can hear. When archaeologists first uncovered these seals, they expected a breakthrough. Every civilization speaks through writing. Egypt gave us kings. Mesopotamia gave us laws. China gave us dynasties. The Indus Valley should have done the same. A name, a ruler, a story, something to anchor this civilization in human memory. But the seals refused to cooperate. The symbols remained unreadable, not broken, not damaged, just unwilling to explain themselves. The problem was not quantity. It was length. Indus inscriptions are short. 5 signs. 6, 7, rarely more. No long tablets. No walls filled with text. No carved histories. Nothing that unfolds over time. It is as if the Indus people stopped writing just before explanation began. As if they deliberately avoided saying too much. This is not random art. The symbols follow rules. Some signs always appear first. Others always in a sequence. Certain combinations repeat across cities separated by hundreds of miles. This is structure. This is grammar. This is language. But language designed for something specific. Not storytelling. Not myth. Not praise. Something else. Researchers have proposed many answers. Trade markers. Names of merchants. Clan identifiers. Religious signs. Administrative tags. All possible. None proven. And in that uncertainty, a darker idea emerges. What if the Indus people never intended their writing to be read by outsiders? What if it was meant only for those inside the system? To understand that idea, we must look at how different they were. Other civilizations shouted power. Kings carved victories into stone. Gods towered over humans. Wars were immortalized. The Indus Valley did none of this. No war scenes. No heroic rulers. No divine figures demanding obedience. Their art is quiet, balanced, controlled. Their cities tell the same story. No palaces. No royal districts. No elevated thrones. Power exists, but it does not announce itself. It is spread across infrastructure, drainage, weights, street layouts, organization without spectacle, authority without a face. This changes how we understand their writing. Perhaps it was not used to rule. Perhaps it was used to coordinate, to manage trade flows, to track goods, to maintain balance. Writing as a tool of cooperation, not domination. A dangerous idea. Across the entire Indus world, the same weights were used. The same ratios. The same measurements. From city to city, people agreed. This is extraordinary. It means trust. It means stability. It means a shared understanding of fairness. But shared systems are fragile. The rivers began to change. Rains weakened. Floods arrived out of season. Trade routes faltered. The system strained. Other civilizations responded with force. They centralized power. They crowned rulers. They enforced obedience. The Indus did not. Instead, something quieter happened. Writing became rarer. Seals disappeared from later layers. Brick sizes changed. Weights varied. The shared system dissolved, not replaced, but abandoned. Coordination failed. And without coordination, cities cannot survive. People began leaving. Not in panic. Not all at once. Families moved east, toward smaller rivers, toward safer land. They took skills. They took farming knowledge. They did not take cities. This was not collapse. It was choice. Why abandon something so advanced? One answer is disease. Crowded cities depend on clean water. Floods damaged drainage. Wells became contaminated. Illness spreads quietly. If cities became death traps, leaving was survival. Another answer is social stress. A system built on balance cannot survive scarcity. Trust erodes. Disagreements harden. Rather than enforce control, the people dispersed. Smaller groups. Less pressure. Less risk. Lives were saved. But memory was lost. Without cities, writing had no home. No scribes. No archives. The script faded. Centuries passed. New cultures rose. New languages spread. The Indus voice disappeared. But something remained. At later sites, seals reappear. Worn smooth. Carried long after the cities were gone. Not discarded. Kept. This was not practical. It was emotional. Perhaps these seals were identity. A reminder of who they had been. But without writing, memory erodes. Stories shrink. Meanings blur. Eventually, even legends vanish. Then archaeologists notice something unsettling. At the very end of some cities, objects are arranged. Seals grouped together. Tools aligned. Not trash. Not chaos. Preparation. Why choose what survives you? Unless you believe someone will come later. Unless you believe the future matters. What if the Indus people knew their world was ending? Not suddenly, but surely. What if they chose to leave before collapse turned violent? Before cities demanded kings? Before control replaced balance? If so, the Indus civilization did not fall. It withdrew. But withdrew to where? Into villages. Into new cultures. Into histories written by others. Perhaps they never disappeared. Perhaps they are still here. Unrecognized. Uncredited. The writing of the Indus Valley refused to speak. Not because it failed, but because its world ended before it could explain itself. And now, thousands of years later, the silence remains. Waiting. For someone who understands that not all civilizations wanted to be remembered loudly. Some only wanted to survive. They did not leave in panic. There are no layers of ash. No collapsed walls. No mass graves carved into the earth. Instead, archaeologists find something far more unsettling. Absence. Footprints without bodies. Homes without people. Cities without sound. The Indus Valley did not end in fire. It ended in silence. As the great cities emptied, the people moved slowly, deliberately, away from the stone grids and public baths that once defined their world. Eastward, southward, toward rivers that still promised life. This was not a flight. It was a decision. For decades, history claimed the Indus people vanished, that they were replaced, overrun, forgotten. But the ground does not agree. In small villages far from Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, archaeologists began to notice something familiar. Pottery shaped the same way. Beads drilled with the same precision. Tools crafted with the same quiet logic. These were not newcomers. These were survivors. The cities died. The people did not. Civilizations usually fall like towers. This one melted, like salt in water. As urban life faded, brick gave way to wood. Wide streets narrowed into paths. Public order softened into local rhythm. Nothing monumental enough to survive thousands of years. History remembers stone. The Indus people chose soil. And soil forgets quickly. Children born after the cities never walked straight streets. Never entered great baths. Never saw seals pressed into clay. They grew among fields. Among rivers. Among quiet lives. The cities became stories. Then echoes. Then nothing. But culture does not die easily. It hides. Look closely at later societies in the region. Their respect for water. Their careful town planning. Their emphasis on cleanliness and balance. These ideas did not appear suddenly. They were inherited, passed down not through writing, but through habit. Even today, some village practices follow patterns older than recorded history. The Indus civilization did not disappear. It went underground. If the people survived, why didn't the cities return? The answer may lie in trauma. Urban life had failed them. Floods destroyed systems. Disease spread silently. Certainty vanished. The cities had become dangerous. And the Indus people learned something painful. Complexity creates vulnerability, so they chose resilience over greatness. Small communities are harder to destroy. They adapt faster. They depend less on fragile systems. This choice saved lives, but it demanded a sacrifice. Their story. Without writing, memory depends on voices. And voices fade. Languages changed. Words lost meaning. New gods replaced old ideas. By the time history returned to the land, the Indus past was already buried. Yet something endured. Order, balance, trade without conquest, systems without kings. The Indus civilization did not rule by force. And because of that, it did not demand remembrance. Its legacy lived quietly in how people behaved, not what they proclaimed. That may be why it feels invisible today. But the ending was not painless. Later skeletons show stress, signs of malnutrition, bodies shaped by hardship. Leaving cities meant losing protection, losing trade, losing certainty. Life became harder before it became stable. And in that struggle, something vanished forever. The writing never returned. Later cultures developed new scripts, different symbols, different logic. The Indus script ended completely. Why abandon writing? Because it belonged to the old system, to trade seals, to cities, to a world that no longer existed. Without purpose, knowledge fades. And sometimes, it disappears entirely. Perfect grids, exact measurements, standard bricks. These are signs of control. And control often rises when chaos is expected. Perhaps the Indus civilization was not confident, but cautious. Perhaps it was built in response to something earlier. A flood, a collapse, a forgotten disaster. What if they were not the first to rise, but the last to remember? Climate records now reveal a chilling truth. The same forces that weakened the Indus world, shifting rivers, unstable weather, resource strain, are returning. The past is no longer distant. It is approaching, and the Indus people left us a warning. Not written, but lived. In the last layers of the great cities, there is no panic, no destruction, only emptiness. People left. But where did the planners go? The organizers? The minds behind the system? Were they simply farmers like everyone else? Or did they carry something with them? Knowledge, memory, a lesson meant to survive. Some civilizations fall, others vanish. The Indus did something rarer. It became invisible. And perhaps that was the point. The cities are silent now. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dholavira, once alive with footsteps, water, trade, and voices, they now stand exposed beneath the sun. Brick walls cracked, streets empty, foundations laid bare like bones after a long sleep. No smoke rises from hearths. No doors open. No one walks the streets. Only wind moves where thousands once lived. For centuries, this silence convinced the world that the Indus Valley Civilization was finished, that it rose, failed, and vanished like so many others. But silence does not always mean death. Sometimes it means hiding. For a long time, historians searched for dramatic endings. Invasions, mass graves, collapsed walls. They found none. And so the Indus Valley became a mystery defined by absence. No kings, no final battle, no moment history could point to and say, this is where it ended. But history has a weakness. It only remembers what announces itself loudly. The Indus civilization never did. Beneath modern villages, archaeologists began to notice something unexpected. Not ruins, habits. The way houses were laid out. The way streets curved around water instead of fighting it. The way wells were shared, open, communal, unowned. These patterns were not accidents. They were echoes, inherited behaviors, passed quietly from one generation to the next. Civilization had not vanished. It had changed shape. As centuries passed, the identity of the Indus people blurred. Children no longer called themselves citizens of great cities. They called themselves farmers, craftsmen, traders. The memory of brick streets faded into daily routine. The past dissolved into the present. The old world did not collapse. It softened, and then something powerful happened. History forgot who came first. New civilizations rose. New languages spread across the land. New beliefs took root. And when writing returned, it spoke a different tongue. The Indus script was already gone. With it vanished names, stories, explanations. This is why the Indus Valley feels like a ghost. No kings to remember. No wars to retell. No epics carved into stone. Only empty streets. And questions. But silence does not defeat science. It challenges it. As archaeology advanced, researchers stopped asking only what was built and began asking who survived. DNA provided an answer history could not. A stunning one. The people of the Indus Valley are not strangers. They are still here. Across South Asia, genetic evidence shows continuity. In farmers, in families, in villages that still move with ancient rhythms. This was not a civilization erased. It was one absorbed. Its greatest achievement was not monumental architecture. It was survival. Most ancient civilizations fell through violence, conquest, rebellion, collapse. The Indus civilization fell through adaptation. When systems became too fragile, they stepped away. When cities became risky, they chose dispersal. They abandoned complexity before complexity destroyed them. And in doing so, they outlived empires. Egypt left monuments. Mesopotamia left laws. Rome left roads. The Indus left people. Not rulers. Not legends. Not dominance. Continuity. A civilization that chose to live rather than to be remembered. But their legacy carries a warning. Advanced systems depend on balance. Water, climate, cooperation. When one fails, everything trembles. The Indus people faced this reality early. They did not try to conquer nature. They moved with it. Today, the same rivers shift again. The same climate pressures return. Modern cities now stand where ancient ones once struggled. The past is not repeating. It is reminding. The Indus Valley Civilization does not ask us how great we can become. It asks something far more uncomfortable. How long can we last? Their answer was not loud. It was not proud. It was careful. In a world obsessed with power, they chose balance. In a world chasing permanence, they accepted change. They understood something history rarely celebrates. That survival is not always about building higher. Sometimes, it is about knowing when to step away. The ruins remain, not as evidence of failure, but as proof of wisdom learned too early for history to understand. The Indus Valley Civilization did not end. It transformed. And in doing so, it became one of the most important and invisible chapters of human history. Because some civilizations do not need to be remembered to shape the future forever.